Okay, so what you see on the board in front of you is task 1 for the pre-release material. A few things that you must take into consideration when answering this question is we are looking at a class of 30 pupils. We need a one-dimensional array for the weights and another one-dimensional array for the names. All the weights must be validated, and finally we need to output the names and weights of the pupils in the class. So quite a bit that we have to get done. So the first thing we need to do is we need two one-dimensional arrays, one for the weights and one for the names. So I'm going to declare a string array called student name, and this is going to have 30 indexes. Secondly, I'm going to declare an array for the weights, and to correspond with the 30 students, this is going to have 30 indexes as well. I know that I'm going to have a loop so that I can enter the 30 pupils, so I'm going to need a counter. So I'm just going to declare a count variable, and I'm going to set that to 1 because it then matches up with the start of the first index in the two arrays, which is also 1. So we've declared our two arrays and we've got a count variable, so now we need to start entering the information into the arrays. So I know we have 30 students, I know that in advance, so the best loop to use for this would be a for loop. So I'm going to start off with a for loop. Okay, so I've entered student name, and then the count will initially start off at 1. So the user's aware when they're entering student 1, then student 2 and student 3. It then reads that information into the array. Now notice a couple of things here to start off with. Firstly, I've used very relevant variable and array names. Okay, this makes it easy for anyone else who's going to have a look at the code to know exactly what it is that we're doing. Secondly, have a look at the way I've used an appropriate message in order for the user to know exactly what it is that I am expecting from them with regards to data entry prompts. I'm now going to work my way through entering the information for the weights. Okay, again, look at the second data entry prompt in which I say enter starting weight for student. It's very clear what the user has to do. I haven't used ambiguous terms like enter weight 1 or just enter weight, because this makes it very difficult then for the user to be clear about are they entering the start weight or are they entering the end weight. So it's very, very important that we get the data entry prompts correct in order for the user not to make any mistakes. So we've collected the name, we've collected the weight. We now need to look at validating the weight on entry. So I'm going to use an if statement to check whether or not the values that have been entered by the user fit a certain criteria. And if they do, then it's fine. And if they don't, then as per the question, we need to reject the weight. And also we need to inform the user with an appropriate message so that they can have a go at entering the correct information a second time. Okay, so the if statement suggests that any weights below 25 or more than 110 are unacceptable. Now, where do these numbers come from? These numbers come from looking at average students' weights and then adding a little bit of leeway onto those weights just in case there are students of extreme weights on either end, and then hopefully anything outside of those weights we would consider incorrect. So the error message clearly states to the user what values are acceptable, and this is very, very important, otherwise the user is going to keep going round and round trying to guess what weights are and are not acceptable. I've then reduced count by 1 so that the user can then go back round the loop, and where you've got the next count at the bottom, by taking 1 away and then adding 1 at the next count, we're still staying on exactly the same student. So the user can then enter this, the same name again and then enter a different weight, and essentially it's just going to overwrite the incorrect information that was stored in the array. So we have entered the weights, entered the names in, done the validation. So we're on the last segment, which is outputting the names and weights of the pupils in the class. So for this, we'll just use a simple for loop and we'll output the information. Okay, now one thing need to be wary about is I've reset count back to number 1 again. Otherwise, count ends that loop on 30, it jumps to the next for loop, and as the instructions within the for loop will only execute based on count being 1 to 30, it will not then enter the next loop. So if I have to reset count back to 1, and then it's just going to go through the next set of instructions within the count, printing each name and each weight, working its way through the student name and student weight array until all the information has been outputted. And there you are, that's task 1 completed.